This conference will now be recorded.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jeff's not quite back in the room. I will call the roll. Director Baker, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Nice to see you. Sort of. Director Moran? Here. Director Johnson? Here. Director Duncan?
I am here.
And I am here as well.
Oh, yeah, service, thank you very much.
Nice. So we have an agenda before us today, and if there are no objections or recommended amendments, I will entertain a motion to approve it.
I so move.
Thank you, Dave. I'll second. Thank you, Diane. And I guess I have to do roll call because Tammy's out there. Right? Steve, do I have to do roll call because of, or hybrid? Okay, I'll just do roll call in this way. There's a motion to approve the agenda. Director Baker?
Aye.
Director Johnson? Aye. Director Moran? Aye. Director Duncan?
Aye.
I also approve. Okay, motion passes. Did we lose our minutes taker?
No, she's remote again.
Okay. She's
I didn't call one. I don't know. She said she got it.
okay. All righty. How about comments from directors? Anybody have comments? I have just one. I gotta find it. I don't know if this is something that applies to us, but there's a county meeting tomorrow. It's not a webinar, it's an in-person one. It's Regional Water Equity Project. And it says it's an opportunity for stakeholders and community members to participate in a regional assessment of current drought management and water sustainability practices, such as stormwater reuse, graywater systems, and sustainable agriculture for our entire region of the County of San Diego, including insights from binational cities and Imperial County. So unfortunately, I am not able to go because I have been asked to be at the groundbreaking for the Deanne's new project, which we should also mention. So if anyone else would like to go or can go, I think it would be interesting to see how or if this applies to our basin. I don't know how it really would, but maybe there's some ideas in there too. And tomorrow also is the groundbreaking for Deanne's new, they raised the money to completely redo their irrigation system out there finally. And they're putting in a very advanced irrigation system that's not just station by station, but point by point, apparently. So apparently it's kind of high tech, and they're also reducing their turf and putting in more native vegetation, not gravel, but actual vegetation. They're very excited. Ramin is very excited about it, and he is very proud of the fact that they're reducing their water budget to try and live within their, the what do I want to say, reduction that's got to happen in the next few years. So.
Madam President, a lot of Congress talk about, especially golf developers talk about doing it, but they're actually doing it.
They're putting their money where their mouth is. And so Ramin asked if I would come and be present at the groundbreaking, and I said I'd be glad to because, he has every reason to be proud of what they're doing.
Well, on this water use note,
Yes.
I learned this morning that the Bates Motel has been sold.
Was that the two-story one?
No, the one-story one here off of Borrego Valley Road.
Oh.
And the new owner intends to renovate all those units and then to create apartments.
That's very exciting.
Yeah, so, they would be a little more than a studio, one bedroom, small kitchen.
Yeah, perfect for those that are just trying to.
And I
Get
think
started.
that reconstruction is going to begin within the next month or two.
So that's the one down towards Borrego Springs Resort on Borrego Valley Road?
Yeah.
Okay, I never was sure if it was the one.
Chain link fence around it.
It looks a little haunted. You're right.
Well, that's why it's referred to as the Bates Motel.
I'll just go with that motif.
Yeah.
Call it the Bates Motel.
Is it like La Casa del Zorro or someone else?
No, someone outside the valley.
Independent?
Independent, yeah.
So it could go for anybody, not just,
Right.
staff.
Yeah, oh yeah, it is not a La Casa.
Okay,
They sold the property.
wonderful.
That is good news.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's one of the ongoing issues here as well, water. Anyone else?
So for the judges conference, to talk about the judges status conference, would that fall under the water master later on?
Anybody else have any announcements or any comments? Okay, any correspondence received?
Yes, no, technically, Mr. Werber sent me
Copy.
thank you for doing that, Jim. Last night sent me like a 5 or 6 paragraph, I'd say this lovingly, dissertation on kind of the history and the needs out there. It came in so late. We have these Brown Act issues with sharing information real close to the agenda coming up. So I just did not get a chance to share that with you all. I was literally going to run to print it, but you really don't have the time to read it this morning. So Jim, I apologize. Just they have not had a chance to see what you wrote me last night at 9:07. I looked at it. It's like, okay, I just can't send it that late, less than 12 hours before the meeting. So they have not seen what you've seen. But Jim's here to kind of, I think, verbally explain what he had written down. So,
We'll give you the time to summarize.
and that's fully disclosed on the agenda. So
Okay.
we can do whatever we want.
Okay.
But I just
Matt,
Jim, no.
Madam President, I much apologize. I was trying to talk earlier, but my internet connection wasn't working. Can I ask a question very quickly?
Yes,
No.
Thanks very much.
I always say yes to our attorney.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So the way the new Brown Act rules work is the board has to approve Tammy not being physically present in the circumstances we have here because her address is not listed on the agenda of where she is right now.
It's at the bottom. It's there.
Is it listed? Okay,
Keep
I'm
going,
sorry.
keep
I just
going.
don't see it on
Keep
there.
going.
Where does
Right.
it say? Okay, I apologize. There it is. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Sorry, Tammy.
So we don't have to approve her?
No, as long as it's listed there and she's got her door open over in East Aurora, New York for all the BWD people who want to attend this board meeting, she's good. Thank you. Sorry.
I see her room's full. Geez, Tammy, let me attend
On
this.
the floor.
They get
Yes.
used to regular water issues.
Well, there'll probably be people in the hallway.
Camera is back here.
Okay. So, thank you, Stephen. Also, I wondered for, so things that are motions, we'll have to do a roll call vote because of Tammy's remote location.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to go down to section 2, the items for board consideration and possible action. 2A is the board of directors meeting minutes. That's usually a consent item, but we'll go forward with that. And I would ask if anyone has any edits, corrections.
I do. They're tiny little things like many instead of may and so on. Should I go through that now or just pass
You
this
can forward
on?
them to me,
Yeah.
if that's okay.
Okay,
Are they mostly spelling? or
Yes.
just- Okay. So no substantive?
no, it's all spelling and typos and stuff. Not many, but
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for being so thorough. Any other changes, amendments, objections? Okay. In that case, I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes. So, thank you, Gina. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Diane. So, are there any comments from the public or directors on minutes? If not, I will call the roll to approve these. Director Baker,
Aye.
Director Duncan,
Aye.
Director Johnson,
Aye.
Director Moran.
Aye.
I also approve. So that is taken care of. And now we'll go down to section 2E, the mall fire hydrant ownership.
Yes, thank you.
Farmers.
Well, I'd love to introduce this item, if you don't mind. So Jim Murmurs is here. Obviously, we all know and love everything Jim Murmurs does for our community. Thank you so much, Jim. As with almost every issue in Borrego, unique circumstances pop up, and we have one here. In the 90s, a requirement was created by the state of California that would require backflow prevention devices to be installed on every commercial connection. Backflow prevention device is exactly that. It prevents water from going backwards from the customer's system into our system. That can't happen, right? Pressure is pushing water the other way. Well, it can happen if we lose system water pressure. If we have a leak, if we shut the water system down for whatever reason, water can flow from the customer side back into our pipes. And that has happened in commercial establishments over the year, and it was so bad that the state legislature decades ago said, you know what, we want to require backflow prevention devices be installed on all commercial, not new, on all commercial connections. So at that time, the mall had like 11 on that side, 11 individual meters, maybe a little less.
Bills that I first received from the water district had 14 individual meters, most of which were 3/4. There was 1/1, 2 1.5, and the rest were 11 3/4.
Cool. So it's the typical development where we owned
I
everything.
can't find them all, but
If you say so.
Yeah, so it was the typical situation where the district was responsible for everything up to the meter. So you can imagine we have the pipeline in the street, and then there was actually a fire hydrant line that serves a fire hydrant, and then Jim's private fire sprinkler system in a garage parking structure located on the west side of that courtyard area, right? The parking area.
underneath the 2-story.
And so this requirement became, put it into force and into effect by the state. So the district had some options, and at that time, Greg and Jerry felt that the best option for all parties involved would be to install what's called a master meter. And so, and Jim, the board has seen the letter that Greg sent to you describing the situation. So the board has seen that letter, basically saying, hey, we're gonna put in a backflow preventer, and that was it. That's all that was described. There was really no mention of any sort of fire hydrant change at all in that letter. So the board has seen that. So the option that Greg and Jerry, my predecessor, and Alan's predecessors preferred was this master meter. And so the district basically sent Jim a letter saying, here's what we're going to do. We're going to install a master meter, and I do believe the district paid for the conversion, correct?
They installed 2 4-inch meters, one on the Sunset Drive over the condos, and then one right in the middle of the Palm Canyon side that goes straight into the service area.
Yeah, perfect. So, as I read the letter, we didn't ask Jim. We were just basically informing Jim that this is the way we're going to do it. And we've operated that way for a long, long, long time. And then most recently, and I guess there's periodic leaks, and then, there's that fire hydrant back there that is totally surrounded by buildings now, which I guess after the original construction, it wasn't that way. So it kind of made sense to have a fire hydrant there, but then I guess when they built those buildings on the south side, that created that confined area, and boy, Jim and I are scratching our head about what firefighter is going to go in there and look up to that fire hydrant when those buildings are really burned.
Or why they didn't put the meter.
Nobody. And so, and there's actually there are at least one, maybe two hydrants on Palm Canyon.
Oh, they're
Multiple.
both sides of the mall, Sunset and, on Country Club and Palm Canyon have regulars, every few hundred feet, hydrants. The second portion of the mall was constructed in like 82, And that's when the center was enclosed. Prior to that, it was open to the Sunset side, to the Palm Canyon side. They didn't know that the road was going to be the main traffic and all of that stuff. So it was, so that hydrant that was in the back was the hydrant for the old portion of the mall. It's right behind Temples. But then when the new part was built, it got kind of like put inside and then just wound up there. And I have talked to the guys who come around to make sure they know where all the addresses are, the regular firefighters. I asked them, under what circumstances they would use that, and they said, we would never use it. We don't like to be inside fires. We don't want to be close. I asked them about the red line too, that says fire lane. They said, that's not our red line, that's your red line. People parking next to the curb. We don't care about that. We're never going to come even that close to a building. We sit out there, hook up our hoses and blast the building.
And even when it was the fire protection district, I made kind of more of a formal request to remove the fire hydrant, and the answer we got was no. That basically a fire hydrant cannot be removed.
It was there when I got here.
Yeah, the top of the plans it was built, it just can't be taken out regardless of the circumstance.
It can't be. It said it won't be under my command. That was hard to ask. He never even came out of love.
No.
So, the story continues, and Jim still has a strong desire to replace all of this water service lines that go back to those, in what used to be those 14, we think, individual connections that were there back in the day. So he would love to do that work. And remember, I think, Gina, you were on the board yet, we talked about this last summer, doing the work. And then this issue of fire hydrant ownership came up, and that fire hydrant ownership issue is still there. So Jim would still like to do the replacement of the water service from the street all the way back. But then he's proposing to do some piping reconfigurations to where we would connect the old hydrant, basically make the old hydrant like it was back in the day. Connect the old hydrant that still would serve Jim's private sprinkler, but there is a check valve, a fire check valve to protect our system from the garage sprinkler system. So Jim's proposal to us is he'd like to handle the replacement of the water service, but then he would like to reconnect the hydrant to the street like it was, because right now the hydrant and everything runs through the meter. When we installed this master meter and the one big backflow prevention device to prevent the installation of these 14 individual units, the fire hydrant line was also put after the meter, which does create the potential for a flow restriction. You know, hydrants typically aren't downstream of meters, but once again, this is a unique circumstance, and it just has been operating for decades that way, where we have a hydrant downstream of the meter, which does have potential flow problems. Once again, nobody's going to use the hydrant in the first place. So there is still the issue of, gee, what's the new fire department going to say about the need for the fire hydrant? So that might go away, but I don't think we can bank on that necessarily. So that's kind of the history. This is where we're sitting today. I'm sympathetic to Jim's request because when you read the letter, it was really pertained just to the backflow prevention devices on the commercial development. It really says nothing, literally nothing about the fire hydrant connection. So I think Jim's request would be to kind of make it the way it was before, where it would be a BWD hydrant again, and then downsize the 4-inch meter to 2.
2 or 3. I mean, I'm not an engineer. The water district said that 2 would work for the meters. I only found 6 meters that are through that one on the Palm Canyon side inside the courtyard. The other ones were over on the south side that served other units in irrigation. So on the Sunset side, a flow restrictor, I guess it would be that put in to reduce it from a 4 to a 3 without having to change out the meter. Why we had 2 4-inch meters is beyond me. I kind of understand why they put the 4-inch meter, or they, water district, put the 4-inch meter on the Palm Canyon side. If they were going to route the 4-inch line to the hydrant through it, they wanted to have the same amount of flow, I guess. But if you take and add up all the meter sizes, which I did, and I multiply them out times their square inches, and you add that all up, it comes to the same amount of square inches as 1 3-inch meter would serve both sides. 1 meter, 3-inch would do all. But maybe when you break it into two, it doesn't add up right or something. But that was a cost-effective way of not replacing the meter, but just reducing its size, and also reduce the billing from $507 to $299 a month. I mean, it's paying over $1,000 a month for just hydrants, now hydrants and meters. So just what Jeff said is pretty close. It was done in 2014, so it hasn't been decades and decades. It's been running through that meter since October of 2014. I bought them all in July of 2014. So this all was a flurry. I hadn't even figured out what all was wrong with it. I still haven't figured out all what was wrong with it. But that was in 2014, and 3 months after my ownership, the new meters were going in. And I just, okay, that's what we have to do. That's what we have to do. Then I get about 1 break a year, maybe every year and a half, because it's an old transite pipe, 4-inch pipe, and they just break. And as we go to fix them, we see that they're broken many times in the past. There'd be like 2 or 3 breaks, and we have to cut that section out and put another one in. It always seems to happen at 11 o'clock at night. So we have to bring a crew out. They have to shut the water down, have to put the pipe in overnight, try to get it back up running in time for Kendall soap in the morning. But sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes it's a bit later. And then that's usually a temporary fix, and you know all this stuff. Those pipes are just like the rest of the Borrego Water District's whole pipes, and so I'm sort of the water district between the meter and the old meter locations. I'm now repairing those, which the water district would have done in the past. So I just thought, well, I'll run a new line out, and so I called Fredericks, and they said, they came out and met with me, and it was like, well, what happens when we get out here within 10 feet of the property line in front? Because the 4-inch line that's coming off of Palm Canyon, they put a valve in there, and they turned the thing 90 degrees, ran it through the 4-inch meter, and then ran it back and connected back to the old line again. So they, instead of the water going straight through, it all goes around that little elbow, the U-shaped thing, which Jeff shows on the map. He included it in the handout today. So, okay, it seems to me, how do you do this the easiest way? I'm not, like I said, I'm not an engineer, not a trained, I'm simply a builder. But this is the area right here that where the issue is. There's only one pipe coming into. There's one 4-inch line. So this line comes from the street. There it picks up, it comes into the project, and here it goes. The meter's here. It goes turn, 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 back, and that's where the water, the hydrant round up going through the meter. So then we thought, okay, correct. Maybe we could just abandon the meter, and then it doesn't matter. Because right now, if you shut the water hydrant off, you're shutting off the sprinkler system and you're shutting off the fire hydrant. You shut off the meter, which is probably not a good idea. If something were to happen, and everybody's going to point their fingers about whose fault it is, who's the responsible party. So I thought, well, if I can put a 2-inch line in to satisfy my water service needs to the units, 2 or 3, whatever the engineers say we should do, like you guys. I could run that out to where the green line and red line come together, and I can stop right there. And then the water district, I think, again, I don't know what I'm talking about, but the water district did 2 things. It reconnected the green line and the red line, and did a T off where the blue line goes off to the right. If it put a T there and brought it, and went over there, ran it through the meter and back to the 2-inch line. And I ran, the blue line is, say I put my 2-inch line in, and where the red line is, that's the old portage line, and it just still goes to the hydrant. And then I would cap it inside the mall, which if you move that up a little bit, and you move that up, there we go. If this red line were allowed to stay here, it services the garage and the fire hydrant is right here, and the 4-inch riser for this garage sprinkler is right there. So this red line would service this and this, and then the blue line would service the meters which are located here, 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 and here. And I would cap, I put a cap right there, you know. Then they'd be independent. That one would still be transite though, and it might still blow. The other thing, again, not being an engineer, Fredericks thinks that it needs to have an air cap, air release valve, some word like that, that they say when you're at the end of a cul-de-sac and there's air in the line, which could happen from any service to the water line anywhere up and down Palm Canyon Drive, air is going to get to that point and it causes a hammering effect in pipes break. So generally, the last pipe break a couple months ago was here. The prior one was here, and it happened 3 times, twice under my watch, and it also has happened once here. We could just keep fixing it and not worry about it, but then there's the question of, is it an improper installation? So what I would like to understand is, if it is an improper installation, it should be put back. And if the sprinkler system needs to be connected to the road, it should be put back. And I'm willing to replace all of my water lines, you know, from the old meter locations. But there is a plan. In hindsight, there are other ways this could have been done and still had the backflows. But at the time, no one was really thinking about it. And we were just thinking this is the easiest, it's the easiest way to read it. It's easier to consolidate meters, etc. And so that's what got done. Nobody thought about the other issue. So I guess what I'd like is to, I'd like some help figuring the problem out. And then once the problem is figured out, sort of sort out who could do what most cost effectively. And
So are we talking about abandoning of a meter that is inside that inner space?
they have not been used in 8 years. They do all the, since I pay for all the water, it's the individual businesses have to pay for the water. That's how we're doing it.
But the fire hydrant itself, it would just abandon that inner fire hydrant.
It has not been abandoned. It is still live.
No, what I'm saying is, are we talking about abandoning it and then depending upon just the one on Palm Canyon Drive?
I would not be opposed to abandoning it. I don't have the authority to abandon it.
And I don't think we do. So I think we're still at the whim of the fire marshal to tell us whether we can or can't. Hardcastle a year or so ago said, no. So on the plans, it's got to stay forever. It's there, it's got to stay.
But the
We
fire
can ask
marshal
again.
is not the chief. I mean, the fire marshal is it the state or county fire marshal that we deal with?
How would you, Cal Fire's in charge now, right? I mean, I haven't monitored the local fire.
Chief Hardcastle he just didn't want to deal with it. He's there to
I understand that, but
if the new people came in and said, no, we're never going to use it, you can abandon that, then it could be abandoned.
I think the switch over happens June 1st or July 1st. Yeah, sooner than.
and
I
but
cannot
the fire
abandon it.
marshal could be the one to direct what happens to that meter or to that fire hydrant. I mean, if he or she said, yeah, it makes no sense to have it there, then the fire department wouldn't have any.
The other issue is the sprinkler system has to remain. I called the building department in San Diego County and said, what if I convert it from a garage to retail or storage or something else? And they said, Well, by converting it, you now fall under the new rules, which requires a sprinkler system. So it doesn't matter. The sprinkler system stays whether it's a garage or retail or even abandoned.
And currently the hydrant feeds the sprinkler system.
The one line that there is feeds everything.
And that's the
That's the transite line that breaks.
The red line or the?
Well, it's one line now. That's the way it would look.
Only the red line
If
exists now.
Jim
Oh, the red line
installed a
is-
new 2-inch service.
The blue one is what I would suggest running parallel to it.
So that's what it would look like after Jim's proposal.
And that would leave the fire hydrant hooked up if we did it that way. If we just said, let's just fix this. Let's just make the red line feed those two and let the blue line feed the rest. What we would do is I would need the water district to reconnect the red line and the red line to the green line and to key off of the green line, run it through the meter, and then continue off the blue line all the way in. So it seems to a novice that that's the simplest solution. And the meter, we would deal with separately, whether we want to put a 2 in or whether we just leave a 4 and reduce it to a 3. We tried to reduce the one on, we tried to reduce it to a 2, that didn't work. So we
Right,
reduced it to a
on
3.
the country club side, a couple of years ago, we actually left the 4-inch backflow in place, but we installed a 3-inch meter with using, reducing nibbles. We didn't put a restrictor plate, we actually put a 3-inch meter in.
Okay. So
We
that
could do the same thing on this other side on
Yeah,
Palm Canyon.
Helen, I was gonna ask for your input on what we're talking
Well-
about, what you think is.
Historically,
Makes sense.
you know, the mall was only the south buildings.
Right.
And that's the reason that hydrant is where it's at,
Right, and it
because there
makes,
were no north buildings.
Right.
And it was an oversight when the north buildings were built,
I
the
think
hydrant got
they
left
should've-
inside there.
they should have moved the hydrant
You
at the
know,
time,
but
but.
stuff happens. Anywho, also, the line going inside where the hydrant is, there used to be a flush down in the northeast corner that apparently was abandoned or something, not by us. But there was a place where you could go in and actually flush the water and let air out. And we could actually install an air gap, an air release valve on that device. So if any air does end up in there, like Jim said, the water, air compresses and water doesn't, so it creates a water hammer issue if you get any air at all. And it happens from time to time.
That's what I was trying to say.
No, you're both saying the same thing.
Yeah, pretty much. That's as much as I know about it.
Okay. Well, there's a lot to chew on here. Anybody have any questions or comments?
I have a question about the hydrant inside. Who is responsible? Is that now a private hydrant, or is the VWD responsible for maintaining that hydrant? Whose hydrant is it?
You know, that's an excellent question. And that would probably,
That's
and Steve, I would
No,
love
wait,
to
wait,
throw
right down to the question
this.
things.
I would love to throw this in Steve's lap, but he's not quite ready for that yet. I really haven't asked him to dig deep into this. You know, there was only, based on everything we've seen, just that one letter that we sent to Jim Wormer saying, we're going to install the master meter and the 4-inch backflow preventer, and that's going to solve this issue. No mention of the fire hydrant. So we can't find any agreements, any transfer easements, any documentation pertaining to us saying, hey, Jim Wormer, this is now yours. Now, the district has always operated under the assumption, that's not a legal term, that, hey, it's downstream of the meter, so everything downstream of the meters is Jim Wormer's, just like everything downstream of the meter of everyone's meter is their responsibility. So, right or wrong, that's just the way we have assumed, and Jim, to a certain degree, has, because he's been fixing the leaks when they do pop up from time to time. Thank you very much. So, you know, maybe not the legal definition, that it doesn't seem like that part was done right. In 2014, okay, you now get the fire hydrant. Because there was no mention of that during this whole transaction.
Oh my, you mean the previous board did something stupid?
Anything's possible.
And
So,
we didn't even know it was routed through the meter until we started this conversation 2 years ago. Because actually, if in fact I want everything downstream from the meter, I assumed there was gonna, the services to the buildings would be mine. I never thought that the hydrant would go through the meter. That was like just done. It wasn't true, anyway. So in my mind, the hydrant never became mine.
What is our situation? I mean, are we responsible for hydrants on private property and other locations?
We can be. Yeah, we can be. Typically, easements are granted in those situations when it's outside of the public right of way. And that's all just handled as the development takes place.
Actually, like in Desert Shadows where I live, the hydrants and the whole water system inside the private development on the private streets, all the water is BWD's water and the hydrants are BWD's water to the individual home meters.
Those are public streets, so John. All those roads are private?
Not just Desert Shadows, not Catarina.
You do all the maintenance
So
on
you all
those
the
streets?
maintenance on the asphalt curves, all that stuff.
Okay.
So specifically, what are we being asked to do?
Work with me to come up with a cost-effective solution to resolve whether that hydrant needs to be there and not, to see whether to abandon it or not, to come up with the simplest solution to restore it, probably like this picture here. Probably, and it's not cheap. And I mean, this, for me to dig all that up and run that line and do the portion that I'm doing, the bid that I got from Redris is many tens of thousands. But what I'm asking the water district to do is, help me with it. I'm not an engineer. I look over the bid that Fredericks has and say, yeah, it's okay to do this stuff. And then when we get out there with the green and the red and the blue line on the other, to just put it back. In other words, what I said, reconnect the green line and the red line so that there's always a straight shot into the hydrant and to the sprinkler system. And then tap off of that with a T on the green line and then run it through a meter with a reduction or whatever. And then I'll pick it up at that point where there's a shut off and everything right there with the blue line coincides with the red and the green line, and I'll bring the blue line in and connect all the other stuff. So I'll spend all the money to, 40, 50,000 bucks to do that, and then you do whatever it costs to do that. 10 feet over, 10 foot back, and 10 foot connection, and all the different valves and stuff you got to put in there. Then we have it back into, that seems like the easiest thing.
Well, it seems reasonable.
Yeah, go ahead, Gina.
So, I mean, from my perspective, it seems like we should probably wait. I know, Jen, you're like, I don't want to wait, but until we get the new fire, the county fire and another contract with Cal Fire, just to see if we can get rid of that meter. But my question is, if we get rid of the meter, the hydrant, what happens to the sprinkler
It
system?
still needs to be on a system that's separate from the hydrant. I mean, separate from the domestic.
Okay, so
It's not go through the meter. I think
you have to have a 4-inch dedicated line for the sprinkler.
I'm not sure it has to be 4 inch because it's only 3 inch in there. But, 4 goes over 3, but 2 goes over 3.
No, I don't know.
okay.
So it's adequate size line to service the sprinklers if they can't go through the hydrant.
So your line coming in, the blue line coming in would be a 3-inch? Or 2 or 3 inch, and then, because is that where
I can't,
it tees off? I'm trying to see.
we have to run 2 lines. There's no choice.
Okay,
Because we gotta get non-needed water to this spot.
okay.
So we could leave the 4-inch in if it doesn't have anybody ever using it. And it's straight from the street, would that reduce the chances of it blowing up? No. So that didn't work.
It's,
So we can put an air gap up there by the standpipe
stuff's, 60 years old. So it's just like the rest of the system is.
So then, I guess the very worst one would be that we drop 2 pipes in the trench. Whatever size needed to be to do the sprinkler. If we left the hydrant connected, we have to drop in a 4-inch and a 2-inch. If it was a sprinkler only, we'd probably drop a 3 and a 2-inch.
So there would be 2 pipelines, one strictly for the sprinklers and one for domestic water.
Correct. Now, we could leave the transite pipe and take our chances and repair it every few years. For the sprinkler system, the sprinkler hydrant, it wouldn't disrupt at least the businesses. You'd still have to, it'd have to be shut off then at the main, it would have to be shut off on the direct connection off the main line to do the repairs, but it's not shutting down the grocery store and the restaurants, etc.
That would probably be, that would be part of your choices. So it seemed, I mean, and this project, whatever version it's going to end up being, would be undertaken this summer.
It should only be done in the summer
Yeah.
because you can't shut the businesses down as long. And this will disrupt the whole driveway to delivering groceries.
Yeah. No problem. And I'm wondering, I know that Chief Hardcastle said no, but it just seems like there's a fire marshal somewhere in the system that should be able to make a decision as well. Maybe we should wait until this, I mean, if we could, it seems like the first thing we need to do is to determine whether we need to keep the hydrant or not. I mean, that to me just seems to be the sticking point for the whole project is whether we go through the hydrant or not, and whose hydrant is it, and if we don't need it, then that's one less piece of the.
There is another solution, but I don't think we will. It's kind of going backwards. We could reuse the old meters are there. Okay, they're in their old locations, assuming that they still function. We could remove the 4-inch meter, abandon it,
Backflow device.
open it up. Huh?
The backflow device.
Yeah, the backflow device was the only thing that I paid for. The water district charged me the kind of half on the back end. But if a backflow were put, this line actually comes right through here right now. If a backflow were put on this side ahead of these meters, and a backflow were put here ahead of these meters, you'd have your backflows, but you would own the whole system from the meters out, including the backflows.
Actually, you could also install individual 1-inch
We
devices
did put 6 low backflows in.
after your meters. Those can be installed also, but it's an issue of, are they going to get run over?
Yeah, so there are other solutions, but they have their own complications. That's why I think this solution was the one that was proposed.
So, question, so if Steve's looking into it, if whether or not the hydrant's abandoned, it sounds like we still need 2 lines to service that.
Because of Jim's private.
Because of the sprinkler system. So, I mean, what happens, who owns that line? I don't know. That line going to the hydrant and then going to the sprinkler system.
Well, we assume.
Right now, the meter is basically where the blue line is.
Right.
So everything, it's all one line now.
Right.
The blue and red represent what happened after. So yeah, it's all from that point on.
Yeah, but it sounds like no matter what happens, whether the hydrant stays or not, there's gonna have to be 2 lines.
Yep.
So if there are 2 lines going in, and then who owns that second line? That's the direct fire line.
I guess it would depend whether there's a hydrant there or not.
Okay.
If there's a need for a hydrant, then theoretically, there's a need for potentially the district to be owner. If there's no fire hydrant, but Jim's private sprinklers are still there, then we don't need to be involved, so that line can be private the whole way.
It just wouldn't be metered because it's for fire service.
They just didn't do it right when they did it. They should have actually installed a
Separate line.
fire service valve to protect for your sprinklers. And that's the way the new sheriff station / library is done. They have a backflow device and then they have private hydrant and private sprinkler lines on the premises. That's the way it was done recently. And, back then they just didn't do it that way.
How about this? We can sit here and talk about different potentials. I've got a couple new ones popped up into my brain already. So I think it's all clear that we want to figure out something, right? So
We do want to work with you, Jen. We just need to talk over we just need to think more about what our options are. And I am still very interested in knowing whether we need the hydrant or not.
and then working with you on these options, not just us telling you, but
Right.
us figuring it out. You and I need to have a few meetings, and Alan and Jay.
All the different options.
Right.
Right.
What the relative costs
Yeah,
and liability are.
We understand the circumstances. We do want to see what we can do to fix it, I guess, and make it, fair for everybody.
And
So, but we, obviously today we're not going to have.
Well, we are able to give staff instruction to begin this process.
Absolutely.
And then how about Steve and I digging a little bit deeper into the hydrant ownership and
Yeah.
what happened?
Yeah.
What is his official position on the status / ownership status of that hydrant based on one letter that we sent to owners?
Well, and as Gina has pointed out, it seems like that we, the BWD, have a responsibility to uncouple the mess on Palm Canyon Drive.
We want to make it right. We have to figure out what's the best way to do that. And so Jeff and Alan and Steve will all work with you and Jake. With some best options.
Board meets every 2 weeks, so we can turn this around quick. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, and it's,
We can. The rest of the world, who knows, but we can figure it out.
And I do think this changeover to Cal Fire may have some.
I just wanted to mention, are you aware, Jim, of the advanced metering project that BWD is going to be beginning in the next couple of years, where we're going to have remote read
I haven't mentioned it.
meters.
We've been talking about this stuff.
And are we going to let commercial people get in the free pilot?
Those meters are really expensive. We haven't gotten into the details of, are we really going to convert 4-inch meters to AMI or not? So that decision hasn't been made. That's why I haven't brought it up to anybody.
I just feel
So far
like
as
you might want to be
residential, right?
aware of it.
I don't even know the backflow, I don't even know the rules on backflows, so we just told them we had to put them in. I mean, I don't know if they go in front of a meter, behind a meter, if they can run the line.
I mean, I typically have for a meter.
That's going to be fine.
So we could put the backflow.
My thought is why add any backflows at all? You already have a backflow. You have the 4-inch backflow in the street and still do this individual meters. So we don't need to add any backflows. That's all protected already. But I didn't want to start that discussion here because that's a whole other alternative.
My guess would be probably go back to the original meters, put the backflow.
But honestly, there is some value to having those individual meters. I mean, we're looking at these sewer-related issues and how much sewer flow is coming into the system. There's no better way to look
That
at,
would be a
to estimate
great way to
sewer
do
flow
that,
than knowing individual water consumption on each one of those units. So
Yeah,
there is something to that.
Well-
Just to having more data is good. Like we try to get out of reading meters. We like to, oh, you take the meters and we'll master meter back here. If we only have 1 meter to read, we don't have to maintain all the infrastructure. It's the dream scenario for us, but you lose that level of detail.
The detail element was lost as far as the mall is concerned, and it's the same thing you're talking about. We don't know how much water is used domestically versus irrigation. So this year, I shut off all the irrigation for 7 or 8 weeks, and I read it when I shut them off, and I went to take a picture when I turned it back on, and the Palm Canyon meter had gone on the blink. And so my bill is an estimated bill for the water consumption through the Palm Canyon, and it's higher than some of the ones where I was running irrigation. So the whole thing's kind of See the ants, funky? Yeah. So just, that can happen too. Kind of blows the experiment of trying to track. the
Yeah.
domestic water.
We just installed a new 4-inch meter that cost them about $4,000 on Plum Canyon.
Not paying for part of that for the next.
No, I'm not even, well, that's all absorbed by us.
I don't think it's, if it breaks, you fix it, so. It sounds to me like Jeff and staff will work with you, going forward, and we'll reconvene when we have some more information.
We'll keep updating you every 2 weeks.
Kathy?
Director Baker.
Tammy, go ahead.
Yeah, I have one suggestion for direction to staff, and that is to determine what does it take to decommission the fire hydrant, as opposed to asking whether or not we need it. I would like to hear what does it take to decommission it. And I think we have BWD and Jim Warmers in agreement that that is the goal for both parties. Please let us know what it takes to just get rid of that thing.
First, I have to have someone who's going to talk.
Yeah, I'll work with Steve on that. My initial reaction was, well, we just got to get the approval of the fire agency. So that's why we asked Hardcastle. So maybe there's another way to do it. I just didn't want to go down that path. But who knows? We can ask Steve. I'll let that to do this.
Thank you.
I think Jeff, the request, and I'm going to let the rest of the board see if they agree with me. The request is figure out what it takes to decommission it. And if Chief Hardcastle said no, I do not believe that it doesn't pass the red face test that he said it's not possible to decommission a fire hydrant. I don't believe that. I just don't believe that. So we're asking you to push harder on that topic, perhaps our new fire leadership, but I don't believe it's impossible to decommission them.
Good point. Yeah, thank you, Tammy. Yep, gotcha.
I don't know how much longer Chief Hardcastle is going to be with us, but I do think the transition to Cal Fire includes him, so.
Maybe we could look into, Jeff, what the county standards are as far as commercial. I know that in the past when I was doing contracting, people would say, hey, I want to build a home. Well, is there a fire hydrant within 500 feet of the project? That was a distance. So, I mean, we've certainly got that covered with what's on Pumpkin Drive already. I don't see a reason why. If I were the fire chief, there's no way I'm driving a fire engine inside there.
Why is it there? Yeah.
I'm not going to take my engine in there and trap my guys in there to use that hydrant. But, we all know that. Jim knows that. We all know that. So it's really, I think, up to the lawyer and see what the standard really is as far as his protection that's required.
Okay.
I have while I'm chiming in here, I have a second question. As a background, we're building a detached garage at our house with a permit, all that stuff. And we're required to put in a sprinkler system into our detached garage. And as a resident, we are responsible for the line. It comes behind the meter. We're responsible for it. We have to pay for all of that stuff. So my question is, in a commercial setting, is BWD responsible for commercial sprinkler systems in garages, or are the owners of the commercial property responsible? I just want to understand that better.
Yeah, not BWD responsibility. So Jim Wormers is responsible for the private sprinkler connections. Now, it just so happens in this case, his private sprinkler connection is connected to what used to be I guess, public, maybe it's not private, I'm not quite sure, but a fire hydrant. So that's what complicates the factor here.
Where would my responsibility of separated, where was the separation point prior to the installation of the 4-inch meter?
I would say all the way to the meter. I would say all the way up to the meter.
No, before the 4-inch meter was installed.
Okay, yeah, all the way up to the meter. I'm answering your question.
What should be?
The meters.
Meters inside.
All the way to the individual meters. We own everything up to the meter, just like every
Specifically, the sprinkler system. It wasn't metered, was it? Was the sprinkler system metered?
Don't think there is.
There's no meter on outside of the system.
It is metered through, it's metered through the 4-inch.
But before there was the 4-inch, there was a problem.
Well, the 4-inch was there before the fire sprinklers were put in.
No. No, the 4-inch was put in 2014. The
Before
fire
the 4-inch
sprinklers-
backflow device was put in.
No, the 4-inch meter and backflow were put in 2014.
Right, but prior to that, in 1960, when the mall was built, that 4-inch line was ran back to the fire hydrant. That's been there forever.
I didn't ask about the fire hydrant here, I was asking about the sprinkler system.
That was done when the mall was remodeled.
Yeah, right. I think we're answering you, maybe, yeah, I thought we were answering your
It
question.
sounds like they just ran it out to the fire hydrant
That's
when they
exactly
put the
what they did.
sprinkler system in.
Exactly what was.
They ran from here to here. And Jim's saying it's up here technically, so they ran there to there. Our hydrant line is always down there.
Okay, but the question is, if the water line broke here, was that mine or the water district's?
I don't know.
Before
To me,
this was put in? Yeah. Because there was no meter, so how do you tell where the end of it is?
Well, but there were meters, they were in each individual unit, so everything was before the meter. So once again, in our world, anything before the meter belongs to us.
So this was yours, to do the sprinkler system. So the water district was responsible to supply the sprinkler system. If a valve went off inside, that would be mine. But and the standpipe is, I don't know.
Not ours, can't be ours.
Standpipe was mine, right? So the water to the standpipe was Borrego Water District, the standpipe end was mine.
Interesting.
We think,
We gotta let the.
we think, you know, there should have been an agreement to cover all that, but.
No explanation.
It's, well, pretty casual.
Especially when the mall owned the water system. Right, Georgia owned everything and we had meters for the condos on the mall property and everything was all mixed up. Which we've been working to settle.
Well,
It's a mess.
as is our water district, I mean, it was a hodgepodge.
6 different companies.
IDs.
Yes.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Oh.
Just,
Hi, guys.
yeah, we'll see what we can do. Could we turn that?
Yeah, you're warm.
Yes.
I'll text my people.
My people will talk to you. Okay. Well, there's a lot to think about there. We'll go down to item 2C, the adjustments to BWD's proposition
Yes.
state project budgets.
Thank you, Madam President. So if you all recall, the basin received $6.1 million grant, Proposition 68 money, of which out of the 6.1, 1.6-ish million was coming to BWD for automated metering infrastructure and installation of monitoring wells at the wastewater treatment plant. 1.3 million for AMI and 150-ish thousand for the monitoring well drilling, for the engineer's estimates. We bid the monitoring well project and the bid came in and it was around $30,000 higher than the engineer's estimate. So within the Prop 68 structure, there are individual project components. So out of the 6.1 million, obviously there's a number of individual projects. So in our case, we have two, as I mentioned, AMI and monitoring wells. So now that we're $30,000, let's say, over budget, now that the bids came in on the monitoring wells, instead of BWD coming up with $30,000 out of our reserves to pay it, I approached the state about transferring $30,000 out of our $1.3 million AMI budget into the monitoring wells. Now, the AMI budget could come in at over 1.3 million. I doubt it, but it could. So, you know, we might have to come up with money out of our reserve funds to pay for some of these improvements anyway, but it might not. To me, there's a lot more potential for us to be within budget on a $1.3 million project than on a $150,000 project that we know came in $30,000 higher. So I approached the state about, hey, can we transfer between project components? If you recall, because the grant process got started so late, pretty much every agency wanted to change their schedules, change their budgets. The component, not the overall budgets, but change the individual components. And the state said that was cool. That was 3 or 4 months ago. Now we kind of, BWD wants to do it again a little bit later in the game, and the state said no problem. And they said, you know what, you don't even have to tell us now, you can wait, and if you have more overruns, you can even ask for a bigger transfer because you don't even have to ask us right now. But I just wanted to run this by you to let the board know that if nothing else changes, we'd like to transfer $30,000 from the 1.3 over to the monitoring well, from AMI over to the monitoring well to cover what we know are going to be cost overruns. The night betting, we will be able to cover in the AMI contract. Because sure, we might spend 1.3, we'll get a lot for that 1.3, but we also might not, so we wouldn't have to come up with any out-of-pocket funds to cover the $30,000. So no real official action needed, maybe just a vote saying, yeah, that's all cool, be nice, and then I'll continue to communicate with the state. And let them know the drilling won't take long, so we'll know here in the next probably 2 months if we're gonna have any additional overruns, and if we will, we can add that to the $30,000, maybe it might bump it up another 10,000 or so, but it also might not, this 30,000 extra could be for the entire project.
Yes.
Well, I would move that we all be cool.
Does that pertain to the air conditioning or to the? So you're basically suggesting that we adjust our budgets to cover the cost of monitoring well, whatever it
And authorizing you to request the change for the state.
That was implied in my motion.
Awesome.
Yes,
I second.
and to read between the lines, but we got it.
I second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion or questions or anything from the public? All right, so there's a motion on the floor to allow Jeff to move money from one project to another to cover the cost of the monitoring well. I will call a roll to approve that motion. Ms. Baker?
Aye.
Director Duncan?
Aye.
Director Johnson? Aye. Director Moran?
Aye.
And I also approve. So we've got the vote.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is 2D, the Borrego Springs Subbasin Water Master Board. What say you?
Don't have much to say.
No,
We talked about the previous meeting at our last meeting.
that's right.
Nothing has transpired since then of any consequence. Maybe that I should disclose that you and I had a meeting with David Garman and Travis Huxman to talk about
And that is our new, basically, I'm calling it the Water Master Committee. But
Are we waiting?
it's on, no, I'll just mention this, it's there under our new, in red, however, I would actually call it the Water Master Committee. Because there could be other things that come up with that. So yeah, we did meet with David Garman and Travis Huxman, and we hope to have Travis at our next meeting to give a presentation on what some of the things that we learned, which was quite fascinating. And I am not learned enough to explain what we learned, but we hope that Travis will share. It was kind of a head turner.
So, yeah, the general concept was how GDEs and kind of agriculture fallowing, long-term can all work together to the benefit of the ecosystem. That they're not necessarily mutually exclusive or at odds against each other, that there is some symbiosis.
It was quite a brilliant.
We were there to talk about other stuff, but it's like, man, hold that thought. Travis, I want to hear more about that later, so.
So we're hoping to have Travis give us that presentation. But it was a very interesting conversation. And so we learned a lot. And that was pretty much.
well, from that meeting, I contacted Sam. There had been some concern about giving through public comment some notice on the agenda for the technical memorandum that has been prepared that you all, I think, have had a chance to see. And that Sam had not committed to putting that on the agenda.
It also kind of begs the overarching question of science coming from outside of the water matter domain, should it be considered or not? And to be honest, I've been reading Tammy's kind of transcript of the status conference, and I'm really troubled by what I read from Markman, in that, you know, his perception is that only things that are generated within the water master domain be considered. I have spent now hours going through the judgment itself and the GMP, and I see no language in either that suggests we should not consider the best available scientific information wherever it might come from. So, you know, I mean, I don't know where, so I'm going to have a call next, I think it's on Tuesday in the morning, with Sam and Mr. Markman to talk about you know, this issue of science from outside the water master's domain. Also want to talk about, you know, getting the technical memorandum on the agenda for board discussion. And hopefully at that point, someone will make a motion to refer that technical memorandum to the EWG and possibly the TAC. So that's kind of what's going on. But this morning, I am really disappointed by what I read. I think Martin is completely off base, and I hope at some point Steve will weigh in strongly. You know, and from my own personal understanding of the judgment and the GMP, I don't see any language that precludes the water master from accepting science from outside the water master's own domain. You got any comment on that, Steve?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Yeah, I commented at the last Water Master Board meeting about that. I don't think there's anything contrary to that in the judgment, and certainly Sigma says that the best available science will be used. I can't think of a single environmental law that doesn't in some form or another say that the best science has to be used. So there might be some question about how the determination about what best science is processed through the water master. I mean, there has to be some process to, I don't want to say validate it, but to give some input to the water master board on the validity of a particular study or report. But at the end of the day, the best science has to be considered as part of all transactions and decisions, and has to be used. I don't know how there could be really a debate about that. It's pretty standard in the area of natural resources law, and Sigma is pretty clear about it as well. So I agree with everything you said, Dave.
Thank you, Steve. So I am correct when I say that there's nothing in the judgment itself or the GMB that includes, quote, outside science.
No, that's correct. Yeah, there's nothing in there about that. That never came up in the negotiations. It would be a difficult thing to say that we have some closed universe in Borrego where nobody else can make determinations except a few people. That just doesn't make sense. So, I mean, in the example that I gave in the Water Master Board meeting is we all know and rely heavily upon the USGS, and certainly there are work products from USGS that can be improved, as all scientific work processes can. But to say that USGS doesn't get through the gate because somebody has decided otherwise, I mean, doesn't make any sense at all to me. I would defer to Trey if he's on here too, but I don't think I've ever heard of a circumstance where best available science gets to be ignored in favor of what, you know, one or two locals thinks is a better way to look at things. That's just not the way the world works.
Well, I'll be interested to hear how Jim Markman interprets that, what his reasoning is in terms of what he has intimated. And also, you know, the bottom line is if the water master has a TAC and an environmental working group, those are the scientists that should be determining whether a study is, you know, useful or not. And that's where the best science comes in. But to predetermine that it's not even gonna go to the TAC or the EWG is contrary to how we should be doing things. So,
Or even the notion that the TAC is going to do the science. That's not what the TAC is there to do. I mean, they're not there to do the science. Right. You know, where would that, you know, it's just.
well, I think these are all valid points that need to be brought out.
Dave, would you mind running by the next steps that you just, again, that you just told us you're
Well, what I
talking
have
about?
asked for is to have some discussion on this issue of whose science is included or not,
So get that on an agenda.
and to get that on the agenda. And if Mr. Markman has another interpretation, show me in the judgment or the GMP where it says that. And I don't, well, it doesn't exist. So, and the other thing is to rather than have the technical memorandum simply be discussed or presented in a public comment, which the board could ignore, you know, to actually have it on the agenda for discussion and possible action with including, you know, referring it to the EWG and the TAC for discussion. I mean, I agree that the TAC is there to vet something. I have no problem with the TAC, you know, presenting some sort of recommendation that it's good or bad science. I mean, that's their purview. So, and to be honest, I can't think of what the third thing was.
Well, I mean, I'll just say that I think that's why we also have the environmental working group, because the TAC is comprised of geologists.
Right.
That, and no offense, Trey, that don't know about groundwater dependent ecosystems. They're not on that side of it. We're relying on, you know, information from UCI and other people like that. So the TAC, in my mind, is really more comprised of nuts and bolts of.
Well, it's the technical advisory committee.
Right, but
The
it's.
other one is the environmental working committee, so
Right.
you've got two, you know.
Between them, I think they could, but I would say that I wouldn't necessarily consider the TAC the group that would be able to say something, you know, something about groundwater, a study about groundwater dependent ecosystems is valid because they're all geologists. I mean, that's a requirement of their being on the TAC. So they're not necessarily the group that would say this is good science for that type of topic is my thought about it. And maybe that's where the working group would come in because there are other people that are qualified there. So that's just the point I wanted to make.
And that's why the environmental working group was created, right? Because we felt there was a feeling that, you know, a little bit more help was needed with some science.
Expertise in that area is important because you're exactly right.
Yeah.
EWG was created because we felt that specific issue needed to be addressed during the negotiations for the judgment. So the best way to deal with that was to specifically create this one committee that was, its whole purpose is just to focus on environmental related issues. So you're right. That's the name says it all. that's the group. Right?
So thank you, Dave, for bringing this forward. It's, you know, very important that we get to the, you know, to get to the bottom of this ongoing question about whether to accept science outside sources.
Well, I wish that the GMP code would be approved.
I'm just gonna.
Yes.
Certainly,
It would help.
the comment was made or will be made in the DWR response that all of the best available science should be used.
I have an indication that specific comment is going to end up in the DWR comments that are coming soon provided by the GM. That comment, but the DWR comment being that best available science needs to be used, must be used. They will have the exact wording, but
I look forward.
yeah, I have strong confidence that comment will be in the GM. Review of
Cross my
DWR.
fingers that that's released prior to the May 11th meeting.
Should still be April, and we're getting to the end of April, but.
Fingers crossed.
Birthday present, Friday.
Diane?
I'm just wondering if Tammy, since you went to all that work with the transcript of the judges conference, if you have anything you wanted
No.
to add?
No, but Kathy Milky, I don't know if you guys, she's in the chat. Whenever you go to public, Kathy Milky wants to speak on this. I don't know if you can see the chat. It's easy for me to see as a remote person.
Yeah.
No, can't see it.
Okay. I will ask for a comment in just a couple of minutes here. Just want to make sure the director is covered. So did I get a copy of that transcript?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Just last evening.
Okay. That's probably why I didn't see it.
I have some comments on the transcript. I just was going to let Patty go first if she wants.
I don't know, I'm not in charge.
I asked Steve, and he said it could be either of both, discussing the judges' conference.
I'm sorry, I haven't read it, so I don't know what the.
There's a lot of so there was an interaction between Wilson and Markman, just to keep it at a high level description. And the question about what science is allowed in was part of it, but there were also some statements made that weren't correct. That's what I was going to, well, two things I was going to comment on.
I don't know if this is like closed session or open session.
Yeah.
Well, the judges' conference was public.
Okay.
The transcript, there isn't a transcript of it that's public. Maybe I should ask Tammy if you have a preference.
I think, yeah. I suggest that we have a little more time between open and closed, make sure everyone has a chance to read it, because I didn't get it done, and it would take a long time. And I didn't get a chance to get it done until relatively late, so I think we should just have a longer period of time between so everyone can read it, and then we can at least all talk from the same base of knowledge.
So we will not discuss it right now because I haven't.
Well, I think, Kathy, you should read it. Yeah, I think you should read the thing. Yes.
Oh, no, I'm not gonna, I have not read it as of now.
Right, because I sent, yeah, I know, it took me a while to get it all I'm not very fast at that, so it just took me a while to do it.
Well, it's amazing that you did that.
Yes.
But I don't feel comfortable discussing it, not having read it.
Right, exactly.
So we'll table that for now. Any other comments about water master issues? And okay, Kathy, your turn to talk.
President Dice?
Yes.
I just have one quick update for the tax. So we did receive, and this does follow along evolving the science. So we did receive updated metered pumping for water year 2022. And the pumping for the ag was 10,863 acre feet. And this is just hot off the press. They updated the farm package in the Borrego Valley hydrologic model. And the estimate from that was 7,639 acre feet, or 35% less than the actual metered pumping. So we have come to a decision point with the Borrego Valley hydraulic model update, and they're asking the TAC members by, and I'm not sure where this date came from, but by the 28th of April to provide a recommendation regarding whether or not the historical water use factors in the Borrego Valley hydrologic model, whether or not they should be updated before they proceed with their model update. My recommendation is going to be, or shall you support it, would be that I would recommend that the water master staff go ahead and update the historical water use factors in the model. They appear to be substantially off. If you recall, in last water year 2021, they were off by 42%. So we now have 2 consecutive years that demonstrate that the farm process is underestimating the water demands in the basin, and have done so historically likely for decades in the model. So just wanted to provide you that quick update and get some input from the board on that before it gets deliberated by the TAC.
So sorry, Trey, so you're saying that the actual water pumped is greater than was estimated before?
Yeah, so in this past year, it's the actual metered water pumped by all the meter reads is 35% higher than what they reran the model for the year and than what the model estimated using the farm package. And then in the previous year, in water year 2021, it was 42%. So we think there's technically a substantial difference between the water use factors that were originally used in the Borrego Valley hydraulic model and the actual results on the ground. So our recommendation is that you would go back through the model and calculate new water use factors for different crops and update the model retroactively in order to, in this case, we'd be using the model to better redetermine the sustainable yield of the basin by 2025.
Well, it sounds reasonable to me. I mean, that was one of the reasons we wanted so badly to have all the meters, because we needed, I mean, nothing like exact or better measurements. And again, we're talking about best science, so I would, and leave to the board to say yay or nay, but I would agree that we should promote using updated, the latest, the best and latest science to update the hydrologic model. What do you say, board?
I agree.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So that's a go forward, Trey, that would be our recommendation.
Could I ask?
Okay.
Trey?
Yes.
Trey, so Trey, the farm process package, the model,
Yes.
that's based on ET. Does the inflow calculation come in there, or is that elsewhere in the model?
It's basically estimating, like you said, Diane, the water demand of the crops based on ET. The inflow from the model is a separate parameter, and that's estimated. So there is a likelihood that when we update the historical water use in the basin, that it will result in changes to what the actual inflow is, because that's essentially an unknown that we calculate from all of the inputs that we're assuming. So we would expect that the inflows, especially the subsurface inflows to the basin, will likely be revised based on updating the model using this new information.
When you say inflows, do you include recharge? I mean,
When
all the agricultural people feel like they should be getting credit for return flows. Yeah.
the return flows are typically estimated as a percentage of the applied irrigation. That as the irrigation has become more efficient over time, that number has been changed, or it evolved, but it's typically around the return flows are typically somewhere around 20% these days of the applied irrigation. It can change slightly from that, but that's just kind of a ballpark estimate. Whereas the subsurface inflows to the basin are totally unknown in this model. They're estimated from knowing all the other parameters, all the other water budget parameters.
Madam President, can I just make one quick comment
Sure.
on what Trey said? Just real quick for the board. So under California law, there's no credit for return flows from native water. So let me put it to you this way. So overlying rights that the farmers have, now that they have BPA, are allowed under California law, or recognized under California law as being the amount of right that's consumed, right? So you pump 100 acre feet, you put it on the crops, you use 90 acre feet, and 10 goes back into the ground. The 10 is return flow, but that's accounted for in the riparian doctrine and in the overline doctrine. You don't get as a farmer credit for not using that 10. That's part and parcel of the right itself, if that makes sense. The only time you get credit is if you import new water into a basin from outside the watershed, because then that's water that's foreign to the watershed. And so in those circumstances, if you're an importer of that supply, you do get credit, but you don't get credit for native water return flows. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Steve. I probably misspoke a little bit. In terms of credit, I mean, accounting for it in terms of making sure that the hydrologic model is giving them due notice for having that, you know, for the sustainable number that comes out of that.
Got it. Okay. Sorry. Thanks.
Yeah, I wasn't clear. Diane.
So this April 28th date doesn't seem like very much time. Does that seem reasonable to you, Trey, or is it going to rush the thinking too much?
Yeah, it's unclear what that date is. They just asked us, the Water Master staff asked us to reply by Friday, April 28th with their recommendation regarding whether or not to perform task 2, which would be the update of the water use factors in the farm process, or not to perform it. I think it's more for their understanding of where the TAC is headed and understanding their workload over the next month or so for the modeling. This will be fully deliberated at the next TAC meeting. So it's not a final answer, but I think they were just looking for maybe some consensus prior to the meeting. And I would expect strong consensus on completing this task.
So you don't have to spend a lot of time doing pre-calculations, deciding whether to perform this task. You have that the 28th is enough time to do your thinking.
Yeah.
At this early step, right? Okay.
I think that's fine for this particular matter.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the directors or questions on the Water Master issues? All right, comments from the public. I think Kathy Milky has been waiting patiently.
Thank you. Yeah, this is Kathy Milky, and I'm happy to go after Trey because it gave rise to a second question. So I have a question and an explanation I wanted to bring up. So Trey, on the farm process model, I think my question is, why would you suggest that we update an estimate of pumping rather than just putting the actual pumping in the model? I'm confused as to why, if the old estimate was so significantly underused, and we know that because we have actual pumping data, why don't we just put in the actual pumping data instead of trying to redo the estimator of farm?
Sure. So, Kathy, moving forward, we will use the actual meter data, but looking retroactively 10, 20, even 30 years, it's fairly clear that the water use factors that were used in the original model are slightly off. Well, they're more than slightly off. They're off by more than 30%, in some cases as high as 42%. So in order to correct those, you'll have to update the water use factors, and typically that's done by crop type, such as citrus or dates. And we can use the meter data to retroactively update those water use factors, and then in the model, when the model's updated, those new water use factors are applied to the historical data, and we'll have to talk in the TAC about how far back in time we want to do that. But as you're aware, some of those citrus crops have been in place for the last 30, 40 years in some cases for the same crop type. So if you were to continue to use the model as is, those historical estimates appear to be off by 30 to 40% for that 30-year period. So what this step is going to do is we would apply the new water use factors calculated from the actual meter data, apply it back in time, and then the model would be rerun, and that would that is certainly going to change some of the unknown parameters, such as subsurface inflow to the basin, because we've got revised data.
I see. So
Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah, because I think what you're saying is, yes, they'll go back and use actuals for the 2 years of pumping data that we've had and actuals going forward. But you're saying because we now have real numbers or information that was estimated in the past, and because the model looks not just forward, well, looks forward, but using historic data. So you're saying by updating the historic data with what we actually know from 2 years, that basically we'll be using those 2 years to get better information for historic years. But I do think there's maybe a little bit of a risk there, right? Because if these 2 years were abnormal for any reason, we're going to do an update based on that. But actually, maybe you've weighed that risk, because we do know this was real pumping in a way that prior all of it was just estimated based on crop factors. So yeah, I hope I didn't confuse by giving a summary, but yes, I think I understand. So thanks.
Yeah, and I haven't had a chance to do a deep dive in the data like the Watermaster staff has, but I suspect that the issue might not be the difference in the water use factors, but more in the total crop acreage, maybe a little bit off in the farm process. It's a question I will be asking the Watermaster staff at the TAC meeting, but they certainly will be able to provide a more detailed response at the meeting in terms of the data analysis that they've just performed.
Thanks. Okay, yeah, thanks. And good to know that you agree that we want to use actual data, because I think, or at least going forward, I think that just makes total sense, right? And then second, a comment for the board on a different item. Several minutes ago, you were talking about best available science and thinking about that and looking into that in the judgment. And I just wanted to add, I think that the judgment addresses a different but related item, which is conflict of interest of different consultants. And so I think, Dave, as you're thinking about this and discussing with the Watermaster, I just wanted to put a bug in your ear to remember that when we were negotiating the adjudication, it was important to the parties in the room who had very disparate interests, including, the farmers, the rec interests, and the BWD, to make sure that the science and the data was coming from parties that didn't really have a horse in the race. And so I think there is a concern that if we're getting science that is coming from a neutral and respectable source that doesn't have a conflict of interest with other parties in the basin, and that is something that is important in the judgment, and I think maybe distinct to Borrego in a way that is not such a problem everywhere, but because we have different groups with really different scientific opinions, the question as to what is the best science and what science should validly be looked at from the Watermaster is a different question in Borrego, and we want to make sure that the science is coming from impartial sources. So just something to keep in mind.
Thank you, Gabby. Any other comments?
So if it was 30 to 40% off of what they thought they were using as to what they were using, does that mean our estimate as to how much water we have in our basin is 30 to 40% off?
Well, that is what would come out of running the model, going backwards historically and using those sets of numbers would probably, it could affect the ultimate,
what we
number,
have left in our basin.
in terms of what is our sustainable number. In terms of, right now we know that it's 5,700 acre feet a year. And the reason we redo the hydrologic model every 5 years is because we'll have new information or, we'll see effects of climate or other things that will change the way the model is run and come, possibly come out with a higher or lower number.
So the bottom line is we could have a lot less water than we think we do.
That would be scary, but yes.
I don't necessarily think it's how much water, but the level of overdraft.
Yeah.
That the overdraft may have been greater than at first estimated. That doesn't mean there's less water necessarily. I mean, there's physical monitoring that goes on about water level. It doesn't mean that those physical measurements have changed. It means our estimate of overdraft may have been off. We might need to produce 80% or 85% as opposed to 75%.
We know that.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that.
But we certainly would have had a different maximum sustainable yield number had the real numbers been used as opposed to the farm estimates.
So what the government's requiring us to do in our usage by lowering what they're expecting from us over the next X amount of years, with having these better figures that are more accurate, do they need to adjust what they expect out of us, or will they do that?
The expectation is simply that by 2040 that the basin becomes sustainable. That means we cannot extract more than what's naturally going in. That remains unchanged.
So they're related numbers, but they're kind of two different numbers. It's like Dave's, I agree that we may have actually used more water out of the aquifer than we thought, but our sustainable number is based on, what is estimated as coming into the aquifer. It's what goes in comes out and not more. So but it's good information to have in terms of the quality, water quality, and also where we are in the water levels in the aquifer itself. So those are all pieces of the information when we run the hydrologic model. And
Thank you. Trey, is there a date for the next TAC meeting?
Yes, there is. I'll email it to you, Diane. I'm driving right now.
Okay, thanks.
I gotta ask the question. So Trey, so what I'm hearing is that the water usage factors for ag/citrus might have been higher than we even thought with the 6.2 acre feet per acre. But then when I hear you talk about total ag pumping of 10,000 acre feet, that just seems really low to me. When we were formulating the GSP, we estimated the pumping to be, whatever the overdraft is to get us down to 5,700, but like 23,000 acre feet, of which ag was, 70% of that. So now to hear that ag's down to 10,000 acre feet of actual pumping, then I'm not quite sure I know what we pump, I'm not quite sure what rec pumps, but especially on the ag sector, it seems like they're pumping a lot less than we thought. So I was kind of expecting to hear, ag is pumping a lot less than we thought. But then I'm hearing you say the opposite, that actually pumped 30% more. So why don't the numbers match? Why doesn't total pumping match this alleged increase in evapotranspiration rate of the citrus crop? Why are they only pumping 10,000? They should be pumping a lot more. But that's what I'm saying. I'm asking.
Yeah, Jeff, I think that's a fair question. I think what's going on is that the farm package is very coarse in the acreage. So I think that there's a mismatch in potentially the acreage currently in the farm process than what is actually being irrigated currently. And then there's just been a drop in production. So year over year, the previous year we were over 12,000 pumping, and now we're below 11,000. So there is fouling that's going on, and we're just seeing a pretty quick reduction in pumping over the last 4 years.
Even in light of the fact that they're using on an acre by acre basis, 30-ish% more per acre.
Yeah, I wouldn't be. I wouldn't do a one-to-one comparison. Jump to that too quickly. There's something wrong with the estimate, I'm suggesting we'll have some more information at the TAC. But I believe that there's the water. I don't think the water use factor is off by 30%. I think it's actually the amount of land irrigated was off as well. So that was causing a problem when they were doing the calculations. But we'll certainly have some more information at the TAC meeting for sure.
Okay, good. It just wasn't making sense. So I'm glad it doesn't totally make sense also to everybody. So thank you. I was thinking, why am I confused and everybody else is not confused? But, okay, I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad everyone else is confused. I'm glad to share my confusion. Thank you. I feel better.
Just ask one other question. It's just off a little bit that I got. I've heard that they're talking about putting big solar farms in Borrego. And if they do that, from what I understand, solar farms need water to run them. How is that going to affect us?
They would have to buy BPA, they would have to buy water rights. So in terms of affecting this, I mean, water rights have already been allocated.
So it won't hurt the water basin per se, or
they will have to buy water rights.
Yes, we basically all have to live within the water budget that's been presented because of the stipulation of education for the basin. So there's this much water. And so in order for, if someone wants to build something new or, like a solar farm, they would have to find someone that's willing to sell them some of that water that's already been allocated. So it's all the water in the basin is basically, I would say, owned. That's probably not a great, but it's.
No, we're adjudicated. We own this.
There is no new water that's going to be
okay,
extracted.
so they have to go
So
existing
basically,
farms or
right,
whatever and buy
they
it.
have to find it to make it happen. And of course, it would have to undergo environmental review and all of that. But yeah, they can't just plunk it down there. It's, if it requires water, then they have to come up with the water.
Well, thank you for all your work, everybody. This has been eye-opening.
Yeah.
Thank you for allowing me to
Thanks
sit
for
here.
hanging out with us today. Appreciate it. Okay, anything else for the water master's subject from the public, from the directors? Hearing none, I am going to go down to section 3, the standing and ad hoc committees. Obviously, we've already reported that we have a new ad hoc that will name the Water Master Committee. And other than that, does anybody have any reports for any of the standing or ad hoc committees?
Who's on the Water Master Committee?
That would be Dave Duncan and Kathy Rice. Yeah, go ahead, Gina.
We've been meeting on the budget and audit committee, and Jessica and Jeff, thank you very much for
Doing
all the heavy
work.
lifting. So I know that I will not be at the next meeting, and then Kathy's the second meeting. I think that's when, sometime during that's when that's going
we I think we're down to getting the whole package together.
Right.
And then looking at that, and then we'll be ready to present it to the board.
Right. So it's close.
May.
Right. One of those meetings. So
one of those meetings that one of us is not at.
right. But overall, we're in consensus as to where we are. And so we would be making a recommendation at some point. So just wanted to bring that up.
Diane.
On grants, I just got an email and forwarded it to you, Kathy, and Jeff and Jessica. About something from rural development within USDA that looks real hopeful.
USDA is on our target list, so we're already talking to them. On that and elaborate these.
Great. Anybody else? All right. So Page 2. So now we're going to go to section 4, the monthly financial operations reports. That starts with Jessica, financial reports.
Can I come up there?
You can if you want to. We can see you.
All right.
We can see you.
Cool. So I will go through what is in the packet. These are reports reflecting March of 2023. At the end of the period, we had about 8.3 million in the bank. That includes 1.3 million in bond funds. And we did get an account opened for the Prop 68 funds, so that we're ready to receive those when we do get our reimbursement. Going through March operational occurrences, water consumption was pretty low. It was about 30% less than average. I'm not sure if it had to do with the rain or what, but our meter reads were right on the monthly dates on the 20th of February, the 20th of March. We did read again on the 20th of April, and it looks like things have recovered. So I'm not.
I think there were cooler temperatures and rain, so I imagine that had a bit of an effect on water consumption, at least irrigation wise.
Yeah, commercial was a little higher than budgeted, I think just from tourists, but yeah, residential and irrigation were down. But it looks like they recovered in April, so we'll give you an update on that next month. Other incomes were pretty much as expected. Net gross income for the month was 313,000. In the expenses side, we stayed pretty much within our budget estimates. We did have many of our fleet vehicles needed glass replacements, and we just kind of saved them all at once. So we did spend $6,000 on that. Some of that was some damage caused in the windstorm we had. Our legal expenses were quite high. A lot of that has to do with these BPA transactions that Best and Creeker is working on for us. So far this year, on the deals we're working on, we've spent about $40,000 just in legal expenses for those transactions. But at the end of the year, those will be capitalized with the properties, so it won't affect our debt service ratio, since it'll go to capital projects. Let's see, we did have some high salaries. As you know, Mr. David Dale ended his time with us, so he did get paid out, his PTO that was accrued. The district's policy is vacation and half of sick leave, and then the remainder of the sick leave gets applied to their CalPERS account. We did get double charged by GoDaddy for our annual email service. They're giving us a credit, but I don't know how they did that. And they told me if I tried to dispute it, they'd just cut us off. So we have to wait for the return. We did send in our debt service for Capital One a little early, just to make sure it got there in time, because those were due 4/1, and then the next one, the BBVA is posted April, so you'll see that on the next month. But we did make all of our debt service payments for this part of the year, and not much going on the water master. Oh, I don't think I have their tech invoice in here, but it's coming later. For capital projects, just finishing up some work on well 9 and working on well 15.
Sorry about that, hit the wrong button.
Okay. And then we're going full speed on the tanks. I'm sure you'll hear from Alan on that in a minute. And just work on the Prop 68 items. We did spend $39,000 of bond funds towards the property acquisition for the BPA. So the rest of that will come out of that account in a couple days here. Nothing else too crazy, just work on the capital projects. Yeah, that's it on the operational side. There's a list of all the payments made and posted to the period. And then on the water master end, not included in the report above, I think we got this after I had done the report, but Intera did send their invoice for March 31st. So it was, I think, around 11,000 total. And then we have accounting on the Ocotillo solar project. As of April 20th was the last time we read their meter, and they only have 6.85 acre feet remaining of the 40. So they should be winding down in a few weeks here. And any questions?
Questions from the board? Go ahead. Yeah. So I think that there's been a fair amount of time spent on the Prop 68 stuff, moving budgets around. And I've been concerned that it would, like, on top of what you already do, that it would be too much. How's that working out?
It's working out good so far. We're just now getting started on our first reimbursement request. So, just communicating. We're trying right now to set up a meeting with the sub-grantees for this week. We might end up doing it individually just because they all have different needs and different schedules. But I think we had a lot of front-end legal expenses just reviewing the sub-grantee contracts. So that was kind of a big chunk of money. But going forward, I mean, in terms of staff time spent, Diana's helping me with the AP stuff, and, it's the BWD stuff we would have to do anyways, and then just looking over the sub-grantees. I haven't gotten anything from them yet, but I'm hoping that if we can be in good communication in the first place, we won't have much to maintain on down the line. So I think with this first grant reimbursement request, just taking maybe an hour or so with each party right now, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, will save us some headache and staff hours later on.
So far, so good. Just to add on to that, I mean, we seem to be going for more grants, which I think is great. And I don't want to put another burden, but would it be helpful to at least kind of tally the hours we're spending, or staff is spending on grant servicing and reimbursement and all of that? Okay, so we have that in case when we're applying for other grants, we can account for that.
Yeah, I do track my time. Like if I have a conversation with one of the sub-grantees or emails, I track it. Also our staff, so, when Alan's working with, later when we do the AMI project, when he's working with the contractor right now with Roy, working with Greg Drilling, he's tracking his hours, and those will be reimbursable under the grant as well.
Just so we, when we go ahead, we're accounting for our staff.
Right, and I believe that the grant allowed for.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Anything from the Ethernet?
I'm going to make a positive comment. I remember sitting as a member of the public, I guess, maybe 4 years ago, and hearing a lot of pushback from the staff about tracking their hours. So, yay. It's great.
In a situation like this, it's really important. So we have to insist. Thank you, Diane. I'm sure good positive feedback is always welcome. Anything else for financial reports? I got a very good picture, so thank you for that, Jessica. Water and wastewater operations report, I believe some of that information is in here.
It is. Mr. Martinez is at the dentist today, so
Oh, my.
I'd rather be here, I'm guessing. All is well at the
It
plant.
looks like all as well.
Yeah, Roy's just helping us a lot with dealing with wastewater flow calculation. Oh, no, he did get all the meters recalibrated and fully functional now, so we can at least have a better handle on exactly what flows, sewer flows are coming from which area. We had meters before, they just weren't accurately calibrated and updated, so all of that has happened. So we now have fresh, new, accurate data being shared. So, doing a great job, as always.
And then the last part of this section is the water production and use projects.
All right, well, the numbers are in the packet. So for March of '23, we produced 87 acre feet and sold 95. So usually when we sell more than we produced, it's tanks and storage, and I'm sure Alan can speak on that.
There's a little bit of overlap from when the wells produce water goes to the storage tank, and we may produce more water than actually gets sold in meters because it's in a tank. Basically, that's the discrepancy here. You want me to go ahead and continue with my spiel?
Yeah, why don't you do that?
Okay. I don't, like Jessica said, the production didn't change a whole lot. Doing quite a few things in the field. As Jessica mentioned, the tank projects are underway. Twin Tanks has now got the first course of wall standing. A lot of bolts, a lot of nuts and bolts, oh my gosh. I'm not sure how they're scheduled. The next course is there on site. So I anticipate we'll be working on that this week. All the site prep's done at Rams Hill. We're just waiting for the crew to kind of get this one finalized before they start there, and then Indian Head will be after Twin Tanks is completed. I've been open a dialogue with the DEW as far as what they need from us as far as inspecting, approving. I know we'll have to chlorinate the tanks and, disinfect. That'll all be done by the contractor, disinfecting the tank, but I'll get a scope of what they're gonna need from us. Got a lot of stuff going on with DEW and the state as well. Well, 15, we have power. Finally, after 2 years, power.
We got our fence stolen.
But, yeah, well, we installed the privacy sliding as per agreement with one of the residents in the States on the north side of the fence. Well, that makes it so you can't see what's going on the south side, so somebody stole 200 feet of fencing.
The whole side.
The whole side, they just took it.
One quarter
They
of the square is gone.
They took 1/4 of our fence. I've got an estimate from the fence guy. Unfortunately, it's prevailing wage. They stole $5,000 worth of fence. So it's gonna cost to replace it. I've already got the contractor coming out to replace it. It's unfortunate. I don't know any other way to police it other than park somebody out there in a motorhome and have them stay.
So
We don't have any power. Yeah.
is there some value? I mean, it's not a metal.
No, somebody needed some fence.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. We filed a sheriff's report. He's working on that. Supposed to get that when he gets it completed. They drove right in our driveway with their lights off. I think somebody was watching the site from probably the trailer park. We have a few undesirables in the community.
Well, yeah.
And, I think they were watching it, and it just happened to coincide with the day that they installed all the power poles and the wire. I believe it was that night that it was all stolen.
Wow.
So they were watching the site.
When was that? What day?
Oh, I don't remember exactly.
Last week.
It was early last week.
I know Martha Dykler, who knows everyone and everything, has a friend who says, if anything disappears, just ask me and I'll check it out. So I'm gonna ask.
I'm assuming that it was almost like they stole the fence and had it sold before it was.
Yeah. And the deputies
And
know all the players too,
It
so.
probably went out of town. My guess, it went out of town, maybe just over to Imperial County, the next community over. I mean, they have connections. We also have the little well house building that's north of San Diego Estates at BW. There's an abandoned well there that collapsed. That was tagged by Woody 22. He's the same guy that tagged our fence and the Chamber of Commerce. I'm in the process right now. We don't use that along with Gulf War. I'm going to get the power removed. And I think we want to just demolish that building. That would go one less portrait for him to paint. So I'm working on that right now. Brax is at well 15 right now, installing electric conduits up to the new pole so they can get the slab poured for the meter, get the meter panel set. They've had all this stuff set in their yard for a year, waiting for power. So they're going full bore on that. We're also starting the rehab investigative work at well 10. We did a test pump a couple of weeks ago. We ran, unfortunately, to waste, but we wanted to determine if it would make enough water. We ran at 600 GPM for 5 hours, 32 feet of drawdown, no more, no less. Almost instantaneous recovery once we shut the well off. So that tells me that the casing is flowing, it's open. The next step, we're going to pull the well now and do a video investigation once the water settles. It takes about a week after the equipment's out. If the casing inspection goes good, we're going to proceed with rehabbing the well, and it will be a standby for well 16 because it's not a spring chicken either. But we're hoping that we get good results from the video and we can go ahead and proceed with that. Otherwise, if it doesn't look good, we'll convert to a monitoring well. It's out by Anzio, by the Legion, American Legion.
Ocotillo wells over.
That's where we have
What he's talking about.
the standpipe is there for us.
Do they break our well?
But not, well, the water that they use is from well 16. It's not, nothing comes from well 10. But, so we're going full bore on that to determine that. The guys removed the fence and the well house yesterday, so they'll start pulling that today and doing the work for that. Anything else? I went ahead and we did some SCADA upgrades. It was about $11,000 worth. We had a lightning strike at well 16, and Eric didn't bill us for any of the work until he kind of consolidated a couple months together. But well strike, some work at the wastewater plant, and I also had to go ahead and get us another radio so we can set it up at the Indian Head Booster Station, Booster 3 we call it, because we're anticipating well 18 going out of service eventually. So then we're going to be fairly dependent on that booster station. So it's all been rebuilt. We've got a new panel. We've got just about brand new everything there. So this is the last step so we can monitor on the SCADA what the pressures are when we put it into service. And it'll be put into service when we start the demo on the Indian Head tank as well. So that's pretty much all ready to go.
This is probably on the wastewater treatment side, but I seem to remember that Roy needed to have an alarm system or some sort of contact system for when
yeah, it's a call out system, and we also have them do work on our side because when we have a problem with SCADA, it's supposed to call the operator that's in charge, and it wasn't doing that. So we had some of that stuff worked on as well. So that was our SCADA upgrade.
A little bit more independence for Roy. Roy used to have to physically come to the shop to check.
Yeah.
Components.
I remember that being.
Let's make it easier on Roy, so he's gonna have complete autonomy to check his own stuff.
He can do everything in-house on his end that way. Well 4 is officially retired. We're going to pull the pump, all the equipment, the motor. I'm going to get the power service disconnected because we pay a standby, just like BWD customers have a $60 a month 1-inch meter. it's considerable. So we're going to go ahead and jerk the power there and convert back to a monitoring well also. So it's the least expensive way to decommission the well, other than destroying it completely and filling it in, which is the next step. So we're working on that. That's about it, other than some minor breaks and lateral leaks and things like that the crew's been dealing with. We're working on. Next thing I'd like to report on is Jessica and I and Manuel are starting the monthly state drought reporting report. It's going to entail some basic information for all of our wells. They want source water listings. So we're going to have basically 9 sheets that give them, and get this, they want this done monthly. They want transducer downloads, pumping depths, static depths on the wells, recovery times. They want a bunch of information.
This is a state program?
This is a state requirement. I don't know if we
Even in a
can.
basin where there's no, okay.
Well, I don't know if we can go to them with requests for funding, because it's basically 2 to 3 staff days per month this is going to take up to do
That's
the
a drought
downloads.
monitoring
It's a new
program.
state requirement from our governor that we, because of the drought, that all districts are having to do this monthly
Is
report.
this DWR or the water boards?
It's water boards, it's through state virus water boards.
Called the safer reporting.
That's in addition to the stuff we're doing every 6 months for the water master. We also do, for them every 6 months, we do quality testing. And we're now doing transducer downloads that coincide with that. And the water master is also asking us to also monitor at the sites for turbidity, conductivity, and pH. We're going to have to buy some new lab equipment to do the analysis stuff. Myself personally, I would like to just include the analysis with their water, the sampling, which makes sense to me, but they want us to do it in-house. So they can get the data right then and there. We have to fill out a sheet, and it's all new stuff. Again, it's reimbursable time for the water master. My complaint is staff time. It just requires more staff, and we have a short. Every day we have a short staff for some reason or another. Somebody's sick, somebody's on call, somebody's at the dentist. It's really hard. We only have 20 work days a month, and now we're going to take 3 to do state reporting. That's a huge chunk of my time that we can be spent, better spent, fixing problems. I'm just correcting, that's all.
No, I
It's
understand.
required, we have to do it, unfortunately. So we're just getting started into that. Also, Jessica, I, and Diana will start the year report. That's due the middle of next month. Shouldn't take long. It's just a rehash of what we did last year. But we're learning we have to do that with every public agency, every agency that we're involved with. They're asking for annual updates on all of our information, which I get it. So that's another thing
It's
we're
always
working on.
paperwork.
There's lots of paperwork involved and not enough time to do most of it. It's on our end, it just seems like it's a little bit.
So, sorry, I was just trying to, so is there any negotiation with the water master in terms of timing?
I want to maybe talk with Samantha. This comes from one of her engineers that they come out to do the reads for the monitoring wells. And it coincides that we do our BWD wells at the same time. I would really like to, this additional sampling, it bugs me. It would be easily done through our lab when I take the water master samples in. It would just save us a little staff time. So I'm going to talk to Sam and see if there's something that can be done about that. But they just want the data, and I understand.
It should be compromised or something.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's like, yeah, It's new stuff that's added to our workload already. It just makes it a little more difficult to complete everything.
Well, I mean, you don't have any control over additional requirements.
No.
Except for timing.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
hopefully we
That's all I have to
find a way to
report.
make that work out.
Yeah, we'll work it out.
Thank you, Alan. That's a lot that you're doing.
It's a lot.
And we appreciate it.
One question for Al.
Yes, yes, yes.
You did sample the former well?
Yes, we did.
Went okay?
No. I got a notification from the lab that they are high in nitrates. They're at 20, no, it's 20. The MCL for nitrates is 10. They're at 20 at that
Jim was 83. One of them was 83.
well.
You gave me two.
Well, basically, when I take samples in, they notify me if there's something wrong immediately, and that was the only thing
And
with
they're like,
that well. Wait a minute, you're doubled in MCL at this well. I don't know if those folks drink the water out there or not. We should probably advise that they don't drink the water, so we're okay.
Jeff, what was it that you said was 83?
I've been imagining a lot of emails, so I'm not going to say anything.
I have
I don't know.
the
I'll be quiet.
the email from Babcock says, result for nitrate is 89 milligrams per liter. Result for nitrate as in was 20 milligrams.
That's what the state worries about is nitrate is.
Okay.
So
And
it's,
what would be a likely, source at that particular,
fertilizer,
so
years of
maybe
fertilizer.
just,
And we're seeing a higher trend at well 18 as well with the nitrate levels. In my opinion, and it's probably years of fertilizer. Also, I'll add one more thing too. I'm looking into the PFAS testing. I know we're not required to start until next year. I've got a request into the lab as far as costs. I haven't heard back from them. Sampling bottles, there was an issue. There's two different methods. I don't know what difference the methods make as far as the sampling. It's just different bottles. Trey suggested that we use the EPA method 533, so that's what we'll use. He's familiar with that. But I'm still working on pricing and logistics for that. All of that, what cost is. I don't anticipate a lot of cost. It's another thing.
just one more thing.
One more thing.
So Jeff, next meeting, then we can have a report on the results of the former well testing.
Absolutely, yeah. It takes the lab about 2 weeks to turn the paperwork around.
It would be nice to be able to compare that to the last sample that was taken, I think in 2017, the one that raised all the eyebrows.
See if
Yeah,
it's changed significantly.
Yeah.
yeah, and that's a pretty significant level of nitrates, no doubt about that.
I wonder if, yeah, I don't know what it was in 2007.
Well, but again, too, I don't know, I can't tell the exact date, but they did change the MCL on nitrates. A few years ago, it used to be 40, now it's 10.
Wow.
So,
That
what was
particular
allowable
version of
10 years ago is not allowable anymore.
So there's a lot of different nitrates that they look at, but that one's a particular concern.
Right, and nitrate is their biggest concern. And then, it's bad for you, it's carcinogenic, the whole thing, it's not good for anybody. That's
In my
the issue.
recollection, that almost everything in the 2017 sample exceeded the MCL. It might be like, do you have remembering emails?
They're-
What you say?
It's like, yeah.
But Trey would, he would have access to that historical data. So
Okay. So we'll put together a comparison next, for the
Yeah,
next meeting.
if BAWD was involved, we might have some record with Babcock as well. I don't know if they were involved, that was before my time.
Yeah, I don't know, but we have some kind of.
they were part of a monitoring network back then.
But it was super secret.
that apparently was super secret. I don't know who was, if it was done specifically to generate the GSB originally,
Yeah.
but there
It was
was.
one of those things they didn't want to share.
Yeah, well,
For a good reason.
Sure, it was off by 30%.
Well, thank you, Alan. I appreciate
Thank you.
all that you're doing. That's an amazing amount of work for such a small staff
Thank you.
and 20 days a month.
Yeah, it's not much when you think about it.
No, you accomplish a lot with what you have.
Thank you.
but you didn't have any problems with access or.
No, Jeff sent me an email, said that the owners are like, hey, the gate's open, just do your thing. I actually modified the sample faucet because it was 3 inches off the ground. So I extended it up to where we could actually put a bottle under it to get a sample. You can't run it through a hose or anything like that because it's contaminated. Yeah, it's good to go.
Great.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Hey, Alan, is
Okay.
for 515, the one on DeGiorgio and Tilting T, our new well, do you have any flexibility in, let me back up. I've learned that wells, by the side of all our wells, a little oasis grows because of the water that's purged before and after production starts. Do you
Yes.
have any flexibility in where that water goes, or has that been set by your design already?
So we're creating
Well, I mean, basically at every well site, as you mentioned, when the well comes on, it flushes for about 3 minutes. And when it shuts down, it flushes for a minute or so, and that just typically goes into a pond that we create to keep it on site. As far as I know, we can't really send it off site, so it has to remain on the site.
Let me finish the rest of my question. I just, from the point of view of sensitivity for our Santiago Estates view lovers, since a beautiful little oasis is going to grow around that pond, can you put that oasis on their side so they'll be looking at like the nice palm tree that'll grow and the bushes that will grow as a result of it? It's just a thought, as long as it's not an inconvenience.
That's a nice thought. It could be done, we just have to add extra pipe to pipe it out to wherever we want the pond located. But as far as safety and security, the pond should still be inside of our enclosure.
How deep are those ponds?
Oh, 4 or 5 feet.
That's enough for a little kid to
Oh, yeah.
drown in.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why it has to be inside the fence.
It definitely should be in a secured area. We have several that aren't secured. But in my opinion, it's best to keep it inside the fence. And there's no liability for us that way.
Unless someone steals the fence.
Unless it's still a
And then a
fence.
kid rushes in and jumps in the
Then you gotta worry about broken beer bottles and things too, so. But, yeah, I think it's best that it stays inside the fence, to be honest.
Good suggestion, Tammy, thank you.
It is.
I get the calls from the local residents. Well, Ellen does too, so thank you.
Well, Jeff
Thinking of them, right?
That's Jeff's project now.
Yeah, that's right. Right. I think we're ready for the staff.
Okey-dokey. Talk about grants, pretty much. So Prop 68 just gave, in essence, what I was going to let you all know about. We're still working with the sub-grantees. We're planning kind of another group meeting, but either everyone's busy or satisfied with what's going on. We had one person say, yeah, I can get together this week, and that's it.
I got another one today.
Another one today. So, we're going to follow up individually with each one of the sub-grantees, and everything seems to be going along smoothly. We're to the important part now where we're actually going to start processing reimbursement invoices. So, excellent questions. I think Diane brought that up. But this is kind of where the work for Jessica and Diana begins in terms of their facilitations to process the invoices.
For some of them, it'll be minimal, like the stewardship council. I don't think
Mhm.
it'll be much more education than education.
Yeah, Water Master's got a few months worth of invoices they're anxious to get paid, so yeah, we'll have the full spectrum. In terms of the BWD projects, automated metering infrastructures, kind of the next one for us, and we've had trouble finding a request for proposal format that I think felt satisfactory to all of us. In general, a lot of them just seem to leave a lot of information out. They seem to be really basic or somewhat antiquated in their technological specifications. What they were talking about seemed to be older technology. We think we found a good template. City of Oceanside has one that they produced recently that was shared by one of the metering vendors. I sent that to Tammy for her to review on the technical portions, but kind of from my perspective, it's kind of what I would expect to release as a RFQ, request for qualifications, that we would receive, in essence, qualifications from each potential vendor, select, and then open their quotation after that, and then negotiate from that quotation. So it's kind of a cool process that the City of Oceanside followed with looking at qualifications first and looking at prices later based on the results of looking at their qualifications. But that's not a bid. You can negotiate from that point, whatever that number is that's in the secret envelope of the contractor or the vendor that gets selected. You can negotiate from that. So I really like just the structure. It just seemed to fit with what a public agency would do. And Tammy's digging into I told her to start at the back because the back half was pretty much all the technical stuff, but then I was really pleased with the way the front half looked with the process that the City of Oceanside followed. So I think we're close. Hopefully, Tammy will be satisfied with the technical components, and we'll be back to you in hopefully at the next meeting with a draft request for qualifications, so we can start the process. Then the driller is drilling on the wastewater treatment plant site, so that work is underway. So in terms of our projects, I feel a little bit behind the curve on the AMI because it's taken us so long to get the right document to start the process, but I think we're there now, and it's kind of full steam ahead and focus on, get a little greedy and focus on our projects for a while, on the AMI in particular. And then we've been communicating with the DWR staff. Chris at DWR has been really good, actually, and responsive and getting back to us quickly with specific yes, no, understandable answers. So it's been really a pleasure to work with him. Number 2, ISA Padilla 2023 and ISA 2024 update. I think as I reported 2 or 3 meetings ago, we did receive information from EPA about the ISA Padilla process. It really hasn't started yet. We needed to get a sam.gov number, which we have already, so we forwarded that. And that's just an account number that you create with the federal government to be able to do this type of, have this type of relationship with them. So we've done all that, and so now we're waiting for really the process to start. And here in the next couple of months, we should be hearing something soon from EPA. And at that point, we will have the opportunity to request a waiver of the 20% match on this project. Because we're an SDAT community, we can have the 20% waived. We just can't ask for that waiver yet, but as soon as that day comes, we'll be in the first of the line to request the 20% waiver. That's what, $800,000 on a $4.5 million project, so it's big. It would be a big benefit to our cash flows if in year one, this year / next year, we get to keep $850,000 in the bank and not have to spend it for the 20% match. That would be kind of at the top of the list. Oh, and then you'll see at the next agenda, the pipeline design contract with Dynamic Engineering to start the pipeline design for the ISA Padilla projects that are part of ISA Padilla 2023. And then in terms of 2024, I did hear that we made the ISA list for 2024. I haven't heard on the Feinstein and Padilla lists yet, but I was kind of wondering if when you get on the carousel, do you get kicked off or do you keep going? And on the ISA carousel, we've stayed on, so we'll see if we get flown off the carousel. Is it the nice one that goes slow, or is it the one that you can spend when the kids off? I'm not quite sure. We'll find out soon. So fingers crossed that maybe we can get some more pipeline money for. We'll hear, let's say the end of this year or at the end of this calendar year, we should hear for next year's appropriations. Tank replacement grant update. Alan gave you a great update on kind of what's happened technically. There's one economic issue that's still floating out there that we I didn't forget about it, but we've been focused on some of the other things. We just kind of have moved on, but there was about an $800,000 increase in the bid amounts when you compare the bid, just like on the wastewater treatment plant monitoring well, but on a much larger scale. The engineer's estimate was 2.1 million to do twin tanks, Ramshill and Indian Head and Wilcox emergency pump, and the bids came in at 2.8 million. So we approached the state about getting the increase in the grant funding to cover that extra 800,000. That has been in process literally ever since we got the bid 6 months ago, right? When all this stuff started. I got a call from the state grant staff last week. They wanted to talk to our friends at State Parks to make sure that we're making progress on the twin tanks construction. The grant folks wanted to make sure that we had the lease agreement pinned down with State Parks to allow us to construct on the site. And then the grants folks also wanted to make sure that we are proceeding with this land swap that we ultimately have to conduct with the state for the long-term solution. So the good news is we've done everything we said we were going to do and beyond. So the state grants folks wanted to talk to the state park folks, especially Sandy Tritan, the land manager in particular. So grant folks spoke to state parks folks, and just to make sure that we're holding up our end of the bargain. And the grant folks got nothing but good news from the state park folks that yes, we have the lease agreement done. And the district has satisfied all of its commitments to get the land swap process started. So we are literally in a holding pattern right now, waiting for state parks to process whatever they need to process to make the land swap. And then the the state grants folks asked me about, hey, have you started construction yet? Are you going to wait until construction on the twin tanks until you get the land swap done? And I kind of thought we had talked about this before with the state grant folks, but no, we were starting to not only were we going to do the construction, we actually had started construction, signed the contracts months earlier. I think the day the grant folks were calling me was the day that the contractor was literally starting to rebuild the tank. So all the demo had been done, and they were starting to put in the first ring of the new tank the day the grant folks were asking me, are you going to wait or are you going to go ahead and construct? So the good news is, like, we have nothing but good news. We've done everything we told them. We've done everything we told everybody we were going to do. We've done it. So we fully expect to get approval for the extra $800,000 to complete everything associated with the tank projects that are going on now. And I think the reason the state, and then the state grants folks wanted us to break out the cost of the twin tanks project specifically, because that's going to be in the final agreement with the state for the grant. I think they wanted to make sure that we don't play any games between moving costs from the twin tanks into another one, assuming we don't get the land swap done, which I fully intend to do everything we said we're going to do. But I think what the state wants to do is to make sure that out of the $2.8 million grant, that only, I think it was 900 and something thousand of the 2.8 million that's associated with the twin tanks, that amount's going to show up in the agreement. But once again, that's fine. We never intended to commingle projects. We knew that this one's a little unique because we didn't own the property on which where we owned the tank and where we wanted to build the new tanks. So for it being so complicated, now that the dust is settled, it seems like it's going to turn out okay. We'll get the extra. Like, if we have to come up with another 800,000, right, out of our So thank you, Joseph, and all of our friends at the water board. Oh no, this is DWR, the DWR grant department. They're really, really great. Okay, wastewater treatment plant bottleneck. I think as I reported at the last meeting, Joseph, the same guy, does both water grants and wastewater grants. And Joseph gave us the staff thumbs up that he felt the wastewater treatment plant bottleneck issue, the nitrogen control system that's being recommended by UDEC would be grant eligible. So Diana and I have started the application process. Oh, we talked about this at the last meeting, right? Craig from UDEC is doing the planning component to look at not designing it, they're digging in deeper into what the infrastructure, specific infrastructure and recommended costs would be for that project. So we're going to parallel track his technical work with Diana and I working on the application process itself for the grant. So here in a couple months, they'll have the technical work done. We'll have all the grant stuff done. We can merge the two and submit a comprehensive, complete application in July, August when the grant office opens back up. So we'll kind of be the first deadline for next fiscal year and have everything ready to go for a construction grant for the bottleneck. So thank you, Diana, for helping me with that. then, oh, Wildlife Conservation Board Restoration Grant. We're also going to continue to pursue that grant. Unfortunately, they can't fund the water right acquisition, but the fallowing component, maybe restoration component, yes. I think we're all recognizing the fallowing component is a significant cost, millions of dollars, approximately would be needed to fallow the our parcels that we have now, so that would be great. If we can't get water rights funded, it would be nice to have at least the fallowing component funded, so we'll also pursue that grant. And Diane Johnson found the USDA opportunity where they do mention water right acquisition, and we've seen that, and Anna at BB&K is working with USDA staff to get into the specifics of that. Are there any limits? Do they really mean water right acquisition? But they use those exact words. That's the first time, I've seen those words pop up. So
I
that
think they
is
also
encouraging.
say land acquisition.
Yeah.
They say something about interests in land.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means you can buy land or not.
Yeah, but they even said water rights. So
Yeah.
that was really encouraging. And then in terms of BPA acquisition, I think I can be pleased to report that at the end of the meeting today, Kathy will be signing the certificate of acceptance for the William Bauer parcel. So that we can say that deal is now officially done. Thank you very much, Kathy. And then representatives from UDEC were out yesterday. Yeah, it was fun to have you yesterday. At the David Bauer parcel. So I met David and Desiree from UDEC, and actually Ryan Hall. If you remember, Ryan Hall was on the GSP advisory committee. Like, I never put it together that Ryan works with the Bowers. And I thought, oh, the Bowers weren't really involved in the process. They were kind of outsiders, and I guess they weren't, because their branch manager was on the GSP advisory committee. So, yeah, although I didn't run into the Bowers very often, I guess they were involved in the process. I just didn't understand the Rich Hall connection to the Bowers. So it was nice to see him, but he was out there. So, so I just laughed after being out there maybe 10 minutes. And so Desiree and David Bauer continued to do the environmental site assessment work. So hopefully here in the next week or so, we'll get the thumbs up that the Bauer parcels are clean. And we'll be ready to close the deal on the Bauer agreements. David Bauer is in final review of the agreement as we speak.
Desiree is Dudet.
And Desiree also worked on the William Bauer ESA evaluation also.
Have you mentioned to David about retaining some EPA for that?
He thanked us very much. Okay. He's going to let us know exactly how much. To refresh everyone's memory,
One person.
yeah. So we were talking about in the Bauer transaction, letting David keep some of the BPA, because there's one parcel that we're not acquiring. That's a parcel that is actually identified in the judgment as BPA eligible. So David was very appreciative of our idea that, hey, why don't you keep some BPA associated with the property you're keeping, because that will sure help you a lot in the future. So he was very happy, very glad that we came up with that idea. Is 6 acre-feet the right number? We'll see. I told him it could be, to a certain degree, whatever you want. So he's going to think about what a reasonable allocation for that property would be. Let us know. But it would be in the tens of acre-feet, not hundreds, or definitely not thousands, but a relatively small number compared to what we're acquiring, but still a significant number for that individual parcel.
It's just under 20. It's like 19.72.
Okay.
So, all is well.
Anybody have any questions or comments for Jeff? Anybody in the Ethernet?
I have one comment. Thank you, Jeff, for all your hard work.
And that's a lot. Again, I can't say enough about the staff as a whole. You guys, our current staff at the Borrego Water District is awesome. I just can't tell you how pleased I am with not only the amount of work you do, but the quality of work. So thank you very much. All right.
I'd like to follow up with just one quick thing.
Yes.
Diane, I have been scrolling and scrolling to find the 3 issues that I wanted to just speak to Samantha about. And
I should.
they are assigned from outside the water master, and actual board review and discussion of the technical memorandum, not just offered as public correspondence with, which the board can't just ignore.
Right.
And the third thing, I think that I talked about it, was that the action that the board could take was to actually refer the technical memorandum to the EWG and the DAC. Yeah, but I just went right there.
For what it's worth, I've been getting the impression that the EWG doesn't hold all that much weight in the minds of some of the water master. It's not captive, for example, because it's not paid.
Right.
So I think they're looked at pretty differently. And I was just searching through the judgment looking for the word science earlier in our meeting. And there were a lot of comments from people about the EWG needing more definition, kind of. I didn't see who the comments were from, but that might be coming up.
Well, when we discussed it at the negotiating table, I think the thought was that there would be things that would be outside of, the technical, hydrological stuff, the geological stuff that would need to be addressed. And we didn't at the time specifically talk about GEDs and those kind of biological things that might need to be considered. There was a little bit of pushback about establishing it, but it didn't last long. And I do it.
Hey, how do I got your day fishing bits? All right. All right, everyone. What time is it? It is 11:37. We have to go into closed session, so how about 11:45?
Kathy?
Yes.
Yes. Make sure you have enough time to read through that transcript.
Okay. How much time do I need?
It is not that long.
No. I have to find it. Okay. I need to go get warm again. I feel like I'm turning into an ice cube over here. I'm gonna go stand outside.
All right, Diana, we can turn off the AC.
I turn it up a little bit.
The thermostat's in your office.
Okay. Anyway, thank you, everyone, and we'll reconvene in 11:45.
I still can't access this track. I restarted my computer and everything.
All right.
I don't know
Are we
why.
gonna